Let's go all the way back in history to the most ancient civilization on Earth, Sumer. Ancient Sumer, 7 millennia ago. What we know stems back from the early writings on clay tablets, written down in cuneiform script. The Sumerian civilization was a highly developed and advanced society with grand cities, temples and pyramids. Archaeological findings tell us the cities had amazing mosaics, elaborate streets, housing blocks, indoor plumbing, toilets with water flushing systems and much more. The Temple of Inanna at the ancient city of Uruk still baffles us today with its splendor, its vibrant colors and depictions of strange animal creatures. Inanna was the ancient Sumerian goddess associated with love, beauty, sex, war, and political power. She was later worshipped by the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians under the name of Ishtar or Asherah. Many researchers now believe she was Isis of the Egyptians, Diana of the Greeks, and Venus of the Romans. She was the consort of Baal, the deity who demanded child sacrifice. We shall later see whether this is true or not. The ancient culture of Sumer and its polytheistic religion expanded towards the northwest into Babylonia, then even further west. It went to what we now know as Canaan and Phoenicia. More about this group later. There was a second group. They went further north, all the way to the region we now call Ukraine and southern Russia, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. There they took on the name Khazars and called their new homeland the Kingdom of Khazaria, after their ancestors. Joseph Chagan, king of the Khazars, explained in a letter to the foreign secretary of the Caliph of Cordoba, Hasdai ibn Chaprut, that his people were direct descendants from Japheth, son of Noah. Khazaria was right at the center of the northwestern Silk Road. Merchants who traveled through Khazaria had to pay toll, a lucrative way to swell the coffers of the kingdom. The Khazars were different than the peoples from the surrounding countries. They were described as thieves and spies. They were said to be lawless people who lived a life of sin, of sexual extremities, and of cruelty. They would murder travelers from other countries and adopt their identity. They were masters of deceit. And, last but not least, they were said to worship Baal, also referred to as Moloch, a representation of Lucifer that demanded child sacrifice. In return, Baal was said to reward them with riches, with fame and fortune. The neighboring countries despised them. They hated their sacrificial rituals in which they threw babies into the flames or cut them open to drink their blood and eat their flesh, claiming it gave them incredible power and energy and eternal youth. Urged by these surrounding peoples, the Russian ruler knew he had to do something. In the year 600, he warned their king, Bulan, that their Luciferian practices had to end. He told him they had to convert to either Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. The choice was his. Bulan chose Judaism. But he did not really convert. He merely took elements from Judaism and forged them into his own Luciferian belief. King Bulan and his people lived on and prospered. Nothing much had changed, except for the fact that for outsiders they now called themselves Judeans, which they were not. Mind you, the name Jew wasn't invented until the 18th century. 4 centuries went by. In 965 AD, the Russian ruler, Grand Prince of Kiev, Sviatoslav I, felt they had gone too far with their continued devil-worshipping and child sacrifice. He decided to wipe them out. But the Khazars had their spies everywhere, and the Russian cunning plan was brought to the ears of the Khazarian king, who, just in time, fled the country with his 25 wives and 60 concubines, all of the nobility, plus an enormous amount of gold and silver. The entire exodus of royalty and nobility went via Hungary to Poland, then from Germany southward to France and Spain. Everywhere they went, some were left behind. In order to reveal their true identity, they called themselves Ashkenazi Judeans, knowing very well that their new home countries would not exactly be eagerly awaiting Luciferian Khazars. Ashkenaz, by the way, was the name of a region they inhabited during their migration from Sumer to Babylonia to the Caucasus. Like all regions at that time, this one too was called after the descendants of Noah, Ashkenaz being a grandson of Japheth and great-grandson of Noah. Now don't worry, you don't have to remember any of this. We just need to tell you from a historical point of view. It does explain a lot though, as Japheth, son of Noah, had 2 grandsons, Ashkenaz and Togarma, who became arch-enemies according to rabbinic literature. Now the people we are dealing with here descended from Togarma, yet they adopted the name of their arch-enemy, Ashkenaz. Why? We will soon find out. Just remember this, it was all by design. The Ashkenazim settled in their new homelands and swore to rebuild their empire. In no time, they built up an empire of wealth and influence. After all, they were the royalty and nobility of the ancient bloodlines of Sumer and Babylonia. They had the startup capital, so to speak. They swore to take revenge on Russia, the country they had been expelled from. Their revenge also stretched out to the Jews, as in the original people from Judea. Why? Because back in the time of Princess Jezebel, during a situation in which 2 deities were challenged, they chose Yahweh over Baal. That was their death sentence, as the Khazarian Ashkenazim would never forget nor forgive. Within a few years after they had settled in Europe, they formed an absolute master plan. A plan so big, so intelligent, and so evil, it would change the fate of the world forever. One of the Khazarian families that had joined the exodus from Khazaria was the Rothschild family. That's right, the Rothschilds I talked about in part 2 of my previous series. They settled in Frankfurt, Germany, where they became wealthy and powerful through trade and banking. They called southern Germany Ashkenaz, as a tribute to their ancestry. They offered notes to travelers who left behind their gold and silver, safely stored in the vaults of the Rothschilds, banknotes against deposits. This way they collected an unprecedented amount of riches that, combined with the interest they received, were further used to extend their wealth and thus their power. Meyer Amschel Rothschild had 5 sons who became powerful bankers in 5 large cities: Frankfurt, London, Paris, Vienna, and Naples. In no time, they gained financial power over all of Europe. They became the personal bankers of kings and queens. They even became the treasurers of the Vatican.